pause, we're ready when you are.
So, how many of us have ever dreamed about living on Mars, or the moon, sorry? Well, too bad. Because we're all going to travel 33.9 million miles to inhabit Mars, our radioactive planet, maybe. So, it's predicted that throughout the decades of the century, humans will be able to travel to and from planets, and perhaps even fully colonized by the end of the century. However, it's still a challenge for companies such as SpaceX and NASA to put those astronauts on that planet, mainly because they have to overcome challenges that the astronauts will face during their 8 to 9 month travel. It's not just going to space for 2 weeks. It's a really long time. So I will discuss psychological issues that the astronauts could face, following with long-term zero-gravity exposure and what that could do to them, and finally ending with the takeoff and landing process that scientists still need to figure out. So beginning with the psychological effects, any internal conflicts within the crew can easily end the mission, which is not what the 8 billion is going to be put into. I don't think anybody would be happy if they went up to space and immediately there's like a conflict. So according to Nigel Henvest, a professor in astronomy of the University of Cambridge, documented the International Space Station simulation test in 1999, and states a ground-based simulation involving 27 volunteers descended into chaos on New Year's Eve 1999 when a Russian tried to give a Canadian crew member a kiss and a Japanese volunteer walked out of ensuing practice. So you can't do that in space. You can't just walk out. Astronauts could see symptoms come up such as insomnia and some depression. And with mentality already at stake, scientists must also tackle the zero gravity factor that the astronauts will encounter, really. Which leads me to my second point: long-term exposure towards zero gravity. So, human muscles and bones were never designed to withstand long-term zero gravity exposure. And according to Dr. Romney Cromwell, a senior scientist from NASA, during a 2014 BBC documentary, stated, "The reason for optimizing the exercise program is to find the best sort of recipe for the exercise that is needed to measure bone and muscle in our astronauts." So, without the proper exercise, upon landing, the astronauts will become totally incapacitated, and the mission will fail at that very second. Which leads me to my third topic, the landing and takeoff challenge. So due to Mars's strong gravitational pull, the vessel is forced to circumvent the pull. So I need to go over here. I need a good angle. So, for example, Curiosity, when it landed, it came in here, and due to its size and weight, it was able to create drag right down here. And then it was able to come down, and then the supersonic parachute came out, and it landed safely there. However, with the human vessel, Mars 1, it would come into the atmosphere, and then it would just go down here. So nobody wants to bring or kill the astronauts. And so in order for the vessel to come back or land, it would need to come through its side. And fortunately enough, Elon Musk, recently, in April 15th this year, designed the Falcon X Heavy, which has thrusters on the side of the ship So it could like actually, it would use supersonic thrusters, which would need to circumvent that pole right there. But unfortunately, those thrusters need large amount of fuel, and the problem with that is how will the astronauts get back home, which, oof, no one knows how to get back. So according to Dr. Adam Stelter, the chief engineer at NASA Jet Propulsion Labs, during the 2016 interview to a British documentary, stated, "We value our modern society too greatly to send astronauts on a one-way trip, intentionally, certainly." So I'm kind of sarcastic. It doesn't think he meant it. Well, I don't have a conclusion slide, but in conclusion, I stated the psychological effects that the astronauts will face following with zero gravity exposure and the long-term effects of that, and lastly, how scientists how scientists think that they could land the astronauts and bring them back home. So I hope the speech gave an insight as to what obstacles scientists have to tackle in order to get the crew to and from that alien planet with no health or mental issues. There can be no room for internal and external errors during the journey to Mars, or it will slow the scheduled landing in 2025 or 2030 and cost the lives of the volunteering astronauts.
Thank you.
So, thank you for your time.